Hello. Good morning. Can you hear me? Yay! We are so excited to kick this off today with this introduction. Thank you all for being here. My name is Lisette Orellana Engel, she, her, ella. I am the Vice President of Policy and Systems Change with National Curtinton. We're a multi generational, multi ethnic national advocacy organization who centers young women and gender expansive youth of color in our policy work. And we are proud partners of the Clasp New Deal for Youth program. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes, and I'm Daniel Rose, but I co-lead the administrative committee with New Deal for Youth with Lisette.
It's been so great to see so many smiling faces, so many new faces, to see you all in person and not through a little screen. We're just so excited to be here at the Southwest Library. We're grateful to be in the use of this space. At this time, I'd like to welcome everybody who's joining us via live stream. Hey, everyone, we miss you, but we're so glad that you're joining us. We're really excited to be able to share this event also with folks here in person, partners, change makers, class staff, and we're also really excited to welcome folks from the Biden administration who are supporting young people. We're still getting used to this doing in person, so apologies for this. I'm looking for my second page. Apologies for that. Some policies that are central to our New Deal for Youth platform include economic security for young people, justice, safe communities, environmental justice, immigration justice, democracy and civic engagement, and mental health and well-being. All of our work centers racial equality. You want to go on ahead
Yeah,
and
it's
take your
okay. So simply, we would just like to welcome you guys to the State of Youth, securing an equitable future for young people now. So, welcome everybody. Thank you so much. There's no more. Go into our first question.
There we go. Teamwork makes the dream work. The Week of Action is an opportunity for our change makers and partners to come together, as you're all seeing here. Yesterday, we had a lobby day at Capitol on Capitol Hill. They took over. They did amazing. We're so grateful to everybody who helped plan that, but we're especially grateful for all the change makers who actually kicked butt in ensuring that youth voices were represented and as to why we were here. The main goal of yesterday was to talk about the Congressional Youth Caucus, and I have to say everybody did an amazing job in ensuring that our congressional partners understood what that meant and hopefully get some support going there. Tomorrow and Sunday, we are painting a mural. And today, we are going to talk about our priorities for the administration and how agencies can support our platform, continue to center young people in the work, and build partnerships to create meaningful change.
Maybe I was a little ahead of myself, but still welcome to the State of the Youth, right? Um, so I would like to now turn it over to Hannah Bristol, Associate Director at the White House Office of Public Engagement.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Thank you so much to Clasp and to New Deal for Youth for having us here today. My name is Hannah Bristol. I use she, her pronouns. And like they said, I work in the White House Office of Public Engagement, where I focus on our work with young people, LGBTQI plus people, and also on gun violence prevention and in progressive outreach. It has been such a privilege to work with so many New Deal for Youth changemakers over the past 2 years, and it's great to see so many familiar faces in the room. I know that we've talked with changemakers on such a variety of issues, from issues like child welfare to issues like uh, juvenile justice, and many of you have been able to come into different roundtables and also on mental health. I know that some of you have engaged in that, and it has been really so wonderful to see all the work that you've done in your capacity as change makers and also in your other capacities. And I'm excited to continue to work with you as we move forward. A huge part of my job is listening to young people and creating spaces for young people to be heard, both creating youth specific spaces, making sure that we're putting young people into other rooms, and also communicating out on some of the work that the administration is doing to support young people. And I know my colleagues Terry and Amber will talk in more details about some of the work that they are doing specifically around racial and economic justice and mental health. But I wanted to talk about a few other accomplishments that I know are really important to young people and are also such a testament to the organizing that young people have been doing for such a long time to make sure that our priorities are heard. I specifically wanted to talk about three big priorities: student debt relief, climate action, and also yesterday's announcement on marijuana. In August, the president announced that he will forgive up to $20,000 for Pell Grant recipients and up to $10,000 for all other borrowers making less than $125,000 a year for an individual, or $250,000 a year for families. And this relief will fully cancel loans for 45% of eligible borrowers. It will also cancel all loans for 1 in 4 Black borrowers and 1 in 3 Latino borrowers. So this relief is a huge deal. It will help narrow the racial wealth gap, and it will provide relief especially to working and middle class families. Um, Part of this plan also is making changes to the income driven repayment program to make sure that going forward we don't end up in this crisis again, and that repayment becomes more manageable for people. And the Biden administration, in addition to that, has also provided over $32 billion in loan relief to 1.6 million borrowers through other changes. And one I want to make sure that folks know about, since so many of you are public servants, is temporary changes to the public service loan forgiveness program. which folks should take advantage of by October 31st. We put some temporary changes in place to make it so that it's a lot easier for people to get past credits applied and to reset before payments resume in the beginning of the year. The president also recently signed the Inflation Reduction Act, which I know many of you helped organize around. This is a historic piece of legislation which will lower costs for families, combat the climate crisis, um, reduce the deficit, and make the largest corporations pay their fair share. And on climate specifically, it will reduce pollution, advance environmental justice, and cut energy costs, which will position us to cut emissions in half by 2030. It will also take steps to make healthcare more affordable, which is so critical, knowing that 18 to 24-year-olds are the most uninsured demographic. And so this is a huge investment in our future and making sure that we have a livable planet. And again, something that we know so many young people have been organizing around for so long. And lastly, I'm sure many of you saw the president's announcement yesterday. He announced that he's pardoning all prior federal offenses to simple marijuana possession, calling on governors to pardon simple state marijuana possession offenses, and asking the Secretary of Health and Human Services and the Attorney General to initiate the process of reviewing how marijuana is scheduled under federal law. And we know that there are clear racial disparities around the prosecution and conviction of marijuana possession, and it has upended too many lives. So these are huge steps forward in terms of righting this wrong. And I know there is so much more that you all are working on and so much more that you're interested in hearing about. Terry and Amber will go into a lot of these details on work that they are doing. But I think one of the things that's most incredible about working with young people is that generationally we care about so many different issues and are bringing so many intersectional identities and so much intersectional work to the table because we know that we need to make progress on all of these issues in order to have the kind of future that we deserve. And so I'm just so appreciative to everything that you have done to continue to work with us to be able to get to these accomplishments. And I know that we'll continue to work together going forward on these priorities and continuing to provide input on solutions in order to build the future and the lives that we all want and the lives that other young people deserve. So thank you all so much for having me, and I look forward to hearing from the panel soon.
Thank you so much for your kind words and for being here and for opening the door for continued partnership. So right now, I am going to transition over to Marissa Haudershell for a grounding exercise as we move towards our next part of the event.
All right. Good morning, y'all. Can y'all hear me okay? Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you. How is everyone? Good? Yeah? Okay. Okay, so I'm going to do a little quick exercise. Don't feel pressured to do it. If you want to do it, join. If not, like, I'm not going to get offended. So, all right. Um, so I was asked to do a grounding exercise, and when I think of grounding, I think of trees. So just have like a tree in your mind as we like work through this. So if you feel comfortable, go ahead and close your eyes and just think about one of your favorite trees or just like trees that you like to see or maybe a tree that you encountered at some point. And just like think about the qualities of a tree, like the roots and how it's like grounded into the earth. Also think about the branches, how they spread out, um, and the leaves, how they flow in the wind. And just imagine you're looking up at a tree. There's a nice little breeze, and you're just watching the tree do its thing in nature. And if your mind wanders a little, just go back to that tree. Think about how most trees don't move unless it's like a hurricane or something. But yeah, just breathe. Think of a tree. y'all can open your eyes if you would like. Welcome back. Welcome back. Um, I want to just say two things. Um, just kind of like an affirmation for this space. I would just like to say that we are safe and we are calm. And I'm going to say that 3 times. If you want to like follow along, you can. If not, it's cool. So we are safe. We are calm. We are safe. We are calm. We are safe. And we are calm. So yeah, thank you all. Um,
So thank you, everyone. We'll get ready to transition to our first panel. Give us a couple of minutes. We'll be shifting and transitioning.
Can everyone hear? Oh, beautiful. Everyone can hear me. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being present, being grounded. Thanks to that beautiful grounding exercise. Thank you all for your energy this morning. I want to acknowledge first that we are on Piscataway and Anacostan land, and we are privileged to be here today together. For the first time in years, many of us have met and been working together. So I just want to say I'm really excited to see everyone's faces. Um, my name is Smitha Gundavajala. Pronouns are she, her, and hers. And I am a change maker with New Deal for Youth. I am a third year law student at the University of Washington School of Law. Prior to law school, I did health policy advocacy work in California at the state and local level and had the opportunity to work with young people, training them on advocacy skills, policy concepts, and health equity principles. And I've been really fortunate to translate that work to New Deal for Youth with some of the amazing young people in the administrative advocacy group who are up here today and some who are not up here today. Um, so without further ado, I'm really excited to welcome you to today's program and to be moderating this panel. So during the panel, officials from the Biden administration and New Deal for Youth changemakers will have an opportunity to discuss policy issues that are relevant to young people and how young people can engage in administrative advocacy, as well as how the Biden administration is supporting young people. Lizette already shared some of the policies and priorities central to our New Deal for Youth platform, but I'll reiterate them here. Our focuses are, or foci, are economic security for young people, justice and safe communities, environmental justice, immigration justice, democracy and civic engagement, and mental health and well-being. All of our work centers racial equity. At this time, I would like to welcome our panelists and give them an opportunity to introduce themselves to you all. Before I hand it over to them, I also want to point out there were index cards at the welcome table. If you had a chance to grab one, great. And if not, you can grab one at the break for questions that may come up during the panel. And we'll welcome those for the Q&A portion later on. So I would like to ask the panelists to give a brief introduction of who you are and your role, the work you do, and what motivates you to do this work. And if that isn't enough of a challenge, I'm going to ask you all to keep your responses to a minute just to make room for more of the substantive responses later on. And I think we can actually start with Marissa and work our way down the table if that's all right.
I think this is on. Can y'all hear me? Okay. All right. Hey y'all, Marissa. It's not on. Oh, okay. I think I just need to be closer to it. Marissa, pronouns they them. I am a change maker. I've been involved with New Deal for Youth since the start. I do mental health advocacy as well as environmental justice advocacy. And what motivates my work is just lived experience, things that I've gone through and had to fight for myself and my community.
Hi, my name It is. Hey, there we go. Hey, my name's Cody. I come from Amos, Massachusetts. I've been with New Deal for you since about March and happy to say I agreed to be part of it for year three, so I'm here for another year, hopefully for the long run, but year by year. And I joined because I care about social justice issues. I said yesterday, got sick of being a keyboard warrior and wanted to do groundwork. And I'm doing just that. So, yeah, look forward to this space.
Share the mic with Cody. Can everyone hear me okay? So, good morning, everyone. My name is Amber Green. I'm the Special Assistant to the President for Racial and Economic Justice. Work for the Domestic Policy Council. Um, my work includes all of our equity portfolio and work to make sure that government provides the work that we do fairly and equitably to underserved communities throughout the country. I got my start working in government, sort of at as young age as yourself. I'm from the Bronx, New York originally. I used to cut school to protest. And I said, I should probably not. I should probably, it's okay to cut school for good reasons, but I should probably go about and think about how I can turn that energy into real action. And so I worked through my career to make sure that I could always provide a space for people to be able to share their voices, be inclusive, and really work to make things equitable for people. So that's what motivates me in my work. I'm very privileged to work with the administration and work with my colleagues here, and just really want to make sure that we do things right for everyone. Everyone deserves a chance and an opportunity to do the things that they were created to do. And so that's what my goal is, to make sure that we provide opportunities for everyone, and to ensure those opportunities are equitable and fair.
Thanks, Amber. Good morning, everyone. It's really great to be here. Thank you so much for the opportunity. My name's Terry Tennelian. I'm a special assistant to the president, also working on the Domestic Policy Council, where I have the humbling honor and privilege to help drive the work that we're doing to transform the mental health system, to really ensure that we create a mental health substance use care system that works for everyone, that looks like the people it is trying to serve, and can guarantee access to affordable, high quality, culturally competent, and sensitive interventions that can improve people's lives. I have come to this work after having spent 30 years working in mental health, particularly with a focus on young people and adolescents. I started as a school based health counselor after undergraduate and quickly realized that we needed to do more to change policies and drive that change. So was really humbled when President Biden asked me to join his team, and have been working alongside my colleagues to ensure change. Look forward to the conversation today. I am the mom of two young people who have also had their own mental health journey. So I bring forward a passion to try to get this right for everyone. So thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lukey Forbes. I am a change maker with the New Deal for Youth, and I am also the civil rights coordinator for HCHC. It's a housing coalition, the Hudson Catskill Housing Coalition out in New York State. We are a housing coalition working to build power among low income tenants who are normally Black and Latinx. I am the civil rights coordinator, so we also work on addressing the coordination between housing instability as well as criminal justice. We were able to see that when we're working and trying to make sure that we can help people secure stable housing, we see a lot of individuals that are housing unstable also have a criminal background. But once they have a criminal background, it makes them become housing unstable. I got into this work because I myself am directly impacted by the criminal justice system, being incarcerated at the age of 15, getting out at 22 after losing both of my parents and winning my appeal. Throughout my journey, I've been able to see a lot of the things from the inside the system, working on the outside of the system, and now being a part of the New Deal for Youth to really try to not only encourage local, statewide, now trying to get into really federal policy to make sure that we can do
For our incredible. Thank you all so much. We're so fortunate to have panelists with the wealth of knowledge that we heard just now with y'all's responses. So I'd actually like to dive into the questions. Our first question will go to all of our panelists, and you'll have 2 minutes to respond. The question is, what are some issues affecting young people that are starting to gain traction in the Biden administration? And I think for this one, we'll start at the very end with Lukey and then come back this way.
So I would say that around some of the things that I see that is gaining traction within the Biden office is kind of sitting right next to us around mental health. Nowadays, we're starting to move into a world where this is now being addressed. Before, there weren't so many things to really address the mental health that not only young people are dealing with, but generationally people have been dealing with for years, and now is starting to really have a large effect on our young people because there haven't been any real vehicles there to address this. So, really seeing the Biden administration starting to develop some ways of being able to address this and being willing to come to the table with young people. Hopefully, we can get the things that are within our platform around wellness and mental health to really get through this administration this year, hopefully, to continue on with the development around really being able to address mental health. Another thing that also is what recently what we just seen, the getting rid of the perpetual punishment that individuals have faced for low minor things such as marijuana possession. That has been something that has dramatically not only changed the lives of so many people who are older now, but was still catching our younger individuals within the criminal justice system where they did not need to have any type of record for just possessing a plant. So I'm definitely grateful to see that. And again, I'm gonna pass it on to the rest of the panel.
Thanks, Lukey. Well, picking up on that theme, I think that addressing the mental health crisis certainly is at the forefront of what the Biden administration is doing. President Biden is the first president to talk about mental health in his State of the Union address. We recognize the stress, strain, isolation, trauma that has come from the past several years, not just associated with the pandemic, but certainly generations of trauma that have been experienced by many, many populations. And we also are approaching this as not just a healthcare issue. We recognize that mental health is a force multiplier for so many other of the challenges and issues that we're trying to address. And so we've put forward a pretty comprehensive strategy to try and address how we can create a system that identifies individuals who may be challenged or struggling with mental health issues, gets them to the right points of support or care, and that we encourage the creation of healthy environments to keep people in the appropriate settings where they can thrive. And I'm using terms to kind of make sure that everyone understands this is in and out of healthcare systems. We have made massive investments in improving and strengthening the youth based mental health services that we can offer in schools. We've released $2 billion worth of funding through the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act to really address the trauma that we know many of our youth have been experiencing. We proposed a $100 billion budget to transform the mental health care system. And we are just getting started. This is a topic that is personally very important to the president and Dr. Biden. We look forward to continuing to learn from those with lived experiences. Those are really critically important to how we drive some of these policies forward. And so, again, just getting started. Addressing the youth mental health crisis is one of the 4 key pillars in the president's unity agenda, and we look forward to continuing this work.
Before you pick up from there, Amber, I just wanted to let the panelists know we got word that there's a little bit of quietness, or it's a little quiet on the mic. So if you could lean into the mic and be just close, like this close, then it'll pick up what folks are saying. Thank you.
My outside voice. Everyone hear me okay? Okay, good morning again. I think one of the things I'm particularly proud of is the administration's commitment to environmental justice. Coming from a community that is plagued from, having lead pipes and high rates of asthma, those are things that the administration has taken very seriously when it comes to investments in communities. With the Justice 40 initiative, 40% of all federal investments will go to underserved communities when it comes to climate, clean energy, things that, it's important that we think about mental health, but if we don't have a planet to be on, we're all sort of messed up, right? So when we think about that, it's very important. Thinking about how to remove lead pipes, lead from and replacing those pipes. All of those things I think are really critically important. The Inflation Reduction Act was a huge win for communities around the country when it comes to thinking about how do we make these smart investments and how do we ensure that money goes directly to the communities that need it. The work that I'm responsible for doing in terms of our equity portfolio is ensuring just that, making sure that those investments go, making sure that you're engaging with communities, making sure that we're working directly with the stakeholders engaged that need those resources. So I think that's something I'm particularly proud of. I know that there are many issues that the administration is tackling, but from personal experience, I think our commitment to environmental justice and reducing greenhouse gas emissions is really critically important to the communities that are on the front lines.
Thank you. Um, Harry and here, Amber, got her, but it's wonderful to hear progress being made. Um, I want to shift gears, and this hits home kind. It does not kind of burden effort to um make community college free, and that's a big issue because me personally, my community college is a area with high poverty, but yet the cost is sometimes not affordable. So just appreciate effort and hope to collaborate on that because community college should and needs to be free if we're paying over a grand for 4 year institution. So, yeah.
Well, I don't know how I'm gonna add to all that. That was amazing. I'm like, why do I have to go last on this one? But same to everything. I resonate with all of that. Yeah, I think I'm just really happy that health is actually like seriously being talked about. I think like being an advocate and also someone who has lived experience with mental illness. There was definitely a point in time where I didn't think that it was going to be something seriously talked about on a national level. So I'm excited that it is, and um, I just hope that we don't stop here, that like we continue because there's a lot more work that needs to be done in regards to like actual mental health accessibility for all people. Um, Also, just how that relates to um, the climate crisis. So, and how these catastrophes affect our like mental space and our mental wellness. My heart is with the people in Florida. My heart is with the people in Puerto Rico and all people on the planet that are currently facing the destruction of the climate crisis.
Thank you all. I think we heard a range of issues discussed just in these responses, and all of these are issues that are top of mind for young people. So it's good that these are finally starting to gain traction with the Biden administration. I'd love to pose the next question to our guests, Terry and Amber. Uh, what avenues do young people have to share feedback, ask questions, and participate in administrative advocacy within this administration?
So I'll start with the first part of it. I think one of the things that's really important is that you continue doing what you're doing. Being advocating, going to meet with Congress, writing letters to us, letting us know what are the issues that are most pertinent and that need the most attention is really important. So I'd say keep that up as a first step. I think when you can coalesce and get behind issues as a team, you have more of a fight to get those issues in front of the people that make those decisions, right? I think the Office of Public Engagement, which Hannah represents, is a great opportunity to be engaged and to share those ideas. And so Hannah is here, and you can definitely connect with her. I'd also say there are several other groups within, I believe, which Terry can talk to a little bit more, um, related to HHS and the Ed Department, to provide some of those resources. But one of the other things too with our equity agenda is making sure that we hear directly from stakeholders. So agencies are also working to um, make sure that they're reaching out to communities to get their feedback, to get information. And I'd say one other thing that's really important is through the bipartisan infrastructure law, the American Rescue Plan, and also the Inflation Reduction Act. All of those programs, really key critical programs, are a lot of those dollars are going directly to states. So continue to advocate at the state level to make sure that the funds that the federal government has released to states is used equitably and ensures that your voices are also represented in those allotments.
Just to echo kind of what Amber said, continue doing what you're doing. I think that engagement is really critically important. Hannah is the best person to be able to reach out to connect with those of us in the White House, but not just at the state, but cities and counties. Like as these resources are being moved throughout the United States, it's important to stay engaged. There are formal mechanisms through the Department of Education and Health and Human Services with some youth councils, but also Secretary Becerra is on a listening tour. And so he's traveling around the country, particularly to talk to individuals who've been impacted and want to be part of the solution around mental health. And so reaching out to the agencies and the leadership throughout the administration is going to be critically important. But again, just continue doing what you're doing. Write us letters, keep us informed of what's going on, what needs to get more attention, and use your voices, use your power. Again, this is just reinforcing what you're already doing, but we really look forward to hearing more from you about the solutions that are needed.
Thank you both so much. I think it's so important for young people to know that their voices are valued and that they're being heard. And so all the things that both of you shared, I hope that young people continue to participate and weigh in on the things that matter to them. The next question is for our change makers. I would like to ask, what's one issue that you hope the administration will tackle before the end of the term? And we'll start with Marissa on this one.
Yeah, I get to go first. It's been mentioned here, and I said it in my last one. Mental health accessibility for literally everyone who wants it and needs it, and is curious about it. I think we're doing a great job with awareness right now. Like everyone knows that mental health is a thing, and we should probably, check in with ourselves. But yeah, I just want like anyone that can access it, that needs services and support. I just hope that they can receive that.
Um, so yeah, I already mentioned one which is free community colleges. I do recognize it has not gone through, but you know, another strong push for it to go through. You know, back to what I said yesterday. Another thing I said was most of these issues that affect young people isn't about politics. It's simple human rights. And we need to do what's right, left, right, center because we are in this together. And if you know recent events didn't teach us that, I don't know what will, but we need to make pushes to be better. Um, one last piece is just keep reminding you, not in this room, that their voices matter and they are value in the decision. So, yeah.
I love that you asked us to pick one. um, and I love that there were other change makers on here because these issues, even though they seem so simple, it's very important. The issue that I would pick, since my other panelists were able to also shout out these very important issues, would be the MORE Act, the Marijuana Opportunity Reinvestment and Expungement Act. It is no reason why today in 2022 we still have people who are excluded from accessing job opportunity that they are currently kind of already working in. And we're not allowing this money to be reinvested back into our communities. We're not allowing people to really develop their own lives, and we're persecuting people for the possession of a plant or even distributing a plant. This type of thing that we're seeing going on, I am appreciative that as we see across the country, states are enacting this on a local level to give people the opportunity to reinvest back into their communities and to just break the overall discrimination around this. It is a very when you're having conversations around this with some individuals, it may still seem as if you're just like asking and advocating for people to just sell drugs, but essentially it's moving us towards a better route. We know that a lot of the already legal prescription medications that are used for the same substances that marijuana is used for are a lot more harsher. So I would just love to see the MORE Act be passed within this legislation. But then there are other things, and I kind of figured out how I could slip that in later on. So you'll see that.
Thank you all. I know I kind of made it difficult by asking you all to pick one, but like Lukey mentioned, we will have opportunities later on to bring up other issues that are important to you all. Um, at this time, we're actually going to go into a 10-minute break. And I'd like to remind you all that the index cards are at the table over there in the back. If you want to write down a question and bring it up to me during the break, I will ask our panelists or you can ask them directly if you're interested. So if you would like to ask a question, you can always put your name on the index card, but we'll be going into our Q&A after the 10-minute break. Bring the cards to me. Thank you, everybody. All right, everybody, please make your way back to your seats. We're about to get started. I love all of the energy, the buzz, the conversations that are happening. There will be an opportunity for you all to ask some questions. We got some questions during the break, but after we ask some of the questions that I got, I'll turn it over to you all. So, be thinking, turning things over in your brain, marinating on what you might want to ask, because we do have some amazing panelists, and I want you all to take advantage of their expertise, their perspectives. So, without further ado, we're going to jump right back in. Before we start the panel portion, though, I want to remind people to tweet about this panel, about things that are happening throughout the week of action using the hashtags ND4Y and why we can't wait. That's ND4Y and why we can't wait. Those are our two hashtags. All right. So I'm going to welcome Mars up to the podium to ask the first question. So give it up for Mars.
Hi. Okay. I'm Mars, and this question is actually going to be for all of the panelists. And my question is, if you could create one immediate task to be fulfilled by the Biden administration in 7 days, what would it be? And what do you think is the most successful route of execution? And I would like to not start with Lukey. And I'm going to instead start with Marissa.
Okay. The last end of that, can you just repeat it one more time?
What do you think is the most successful route of execution?
Okay. That was a really great question. Thank you for asking that. So if I could pick one immediate task to be complete by the end of this week, it would be absolutely free, culturally competent therapy for everyone who wants it and needs it. Yeah. And then I guess the most successful route for that, I guess would be to let me think out loud for a second. I guess to have like I guess community and peer support meshed into that mental health support as well, because we are social beings, so loneliness itself can cause a lot of mental health issues for folks as well. So kind of just like creating that community care, and just ultimately just community love and genuine care for each other through mental health.
Well, 7 days is not long, but obviously takes a team effort to do anything with a time frame, even a year. But we would need a mega team. But one thing I feel that is easy and quick has to be mandated in disability education. Um, simple, easy explanation to help you understand people's disabilities, which I know will be a tough 7 days, but it's truly not rocket science. So again, it's about respect and dignity.
Ate that. No crumbs.
Even on this on the
They got you.
so really quickly, my it happened in 7 days was to um, pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act to ensure that everyone has their right to vote, that you can use that as your voice, and the way to do that is to everyone vote, regardless of your party affiliation. Vote for the interests of your community as well. So think about that and encourage more people to do so. So if I had my 7 days, that would be my 7 day wish.
Love having some 7 day wishes. 7 days can seem like a really short period of time, also can seem like an eternity when you're working on a lot of the policies that we are hoping to drive. I would say to accomplish all of the things that we're striving to do to make mental health more accessible, to make it so that it delivers culturally competent services, that it has the workforce that we need to meet the demands across the nation. We need to seek full approval of the president's FY23 budget, which includes the resources and the policies that will solve a lot of the problems that we've been talking about today.
Here we go again with this one restriction thing. So if we could dream of a world where things can strategically happen in 7 days around the issues that we're trying to push, I would again would want to focus on the John Lewis Voting Right Act, but also really push for the amendment to allow for 16-year-olds to also get into that voting pool. We need to increase the young people's access to really utilize their voices. I love spaces like this because we're allowing young people to be able to have a voice. But we do know that with these conservative and moderate individuals who aren't as progressive, they may not care about that voice because they're not voting. So I would really love for us to move into a light where folks are able to really be able to exercise their full strengths and really have their voices heard. Because it's a constitutional change that wouldn't be able to strategically happen in 7 days, a bill that would be able to strategically may be able to happen in 7 days is the Clean Slate Act. It would get rid of it would automatically seal folks' records who have a criminal background. This is something that's very important. It's happening across the state on local levels, and it's also being proposed on a federal level. For those of you in the room with influence, I don't mind go ahead and reading those numbers for you. It is HR 26 I'm sorry, HR 2864. So those are things that I would love to see happen within these 7 days if we could dream.
Um, thank you, Mars, and thank you to our panelists. I'm actually going to weigh in on this question because as a change maker, I have some thoughts as well. If I had my 7 day wish, and this is just a very kind of niche thing, but I think also something of increasing importance and which is top of mind for young people, I would amend HIPAA to cover third party apps to protect reproductive privacy. Because right now, our reproductive privacy is vulnerable to companies that are able to collect that data because the apps are not covered by HIPAA. So that's my small tweak, but I think a very important one. Moving on to the next question. This one was submitted anonymously, so I will ask on their behalf. An adult ally asked, how can we better support youth and young adults with disabilities in the social entrepreneurship space? And, in parentheses, they added, we want to become more of an advocate and ally. So if you could speak to how we can better support young adults with disabilities and kind of add that social entrepreneurship lens. And if you need clarification on social entrepreneurship, I can find out what that means. Does anyone have any questions on that, or are we good with the question?
Can you just repeat it one more time?
Yes. How can we better support youth and young adults with disabilities in the social entrepreneurship space? And anyone who feels ready to start can start this one. Yeah, Cody.
Um, yeah, great question as a disability. I've keep myself I'm blessed to be in a state where we have all of that are very supportive and clear readiness, which include entrepreneurship, but I think nationwide just having the resources of how to get started, how to maintain, how to overcome the barriers of being a business owner with a disability. So overall, just the support and education to be a successful entrepreneur.
I'll just add just a couple things. I think um, as adults, making sure that we can provide really quality apprenticeship and internship opportunities that aren't necessarily relegated to administrative roles when you're working with people with disabilities. I think everybody should be given an opportunity to be able to use with the talents and skills and the drive and the beliefs that they want and apply those. And that's very important. And then also when we're thinking about government contracting and the ways that we work to ensure that we can increase the number of small disadvantaged businesses, that's the goal of the administration as well, to increase that number. And also to make, as you know, Cody mentioned, those barriers to entry when we're thinking about people filling out forms, you know, being able to access government services, understanding how to fill out grants. All of those things need to be simplified so that they're not an administrative burden and make it inaccessible for people. So that applies for everyone, but especially for a person with a disability who is, you know, working, you know, harder than a lot of people to make sure that they are, you know, have an opportunity to be economically secure. And that is very important to ensure that economic viability for everyone.
I would also have to add to just offer your platform to them and don't be afraid to purchase their products or services as well. That is another way to really invest in their entrepreneurial journey and make sure that you are advocating for them if their product or service is good. So that again, you can offer your platform to individuals and the resources that you may have. Like at the end of the day, we're all in community together and we shouldn't discriminate against anyone or their business for any disability or social stance.
I just want to echo that. Kind of stole my answer a little bit. um, but yeah, just echoing what Lukey said. Like be intentional about opening a space for folks with disabilities. Not only invite them to a conversation, but let them lead. You know, we have a voice, and our voices not only matter, but like we contribute valuably to any and all conversations. So I think just like recognizing that itself, and actually being intentional about it.
Mic is on now. Okay. Um, I would echo what everyone said. You know, if anyone else wants to weigh in, feel free. Um, I would only add that, you know, accessibility benefits everyone, as Amber mentioned. And I think part of what helps is this concept of youth adult partnership, where adults are genuinely like working with young people with disabilities, introducing them to investors, and being that bridge, because that's the role that adult allies can play. But that's only in addition to everything that everyone has said here. So um, we do have one more anonymous question, and then I'm going to call another person up to the podium. This is a bit of a hardball question, so just fair warning. What is something in recent federal policy that has disappointed you, and what can the Biden administration do to make it right?
He's ready.
Investing in police to arrest people. Um, it's a history of us not addressing the true issues here. We live in a society where we have the choice. We have the choice to move towards progression, or we have the choice to remain exactly where we are. And as long as our country allows through the 13th Amendment for slavery to happen while a person is incarcerated, as long as criminal backgrounds continue to exclude people from access to housing, jobs, education, legally segregating folks, we should not be investing in police to just arrest people. Because when we're investing in police to just arrest people, they're going to arrest people. That does not solve crime. That does not solve the issues that we are facing. That does not address anything that is going on in urban communities. What will address things is answering the actual thing at the root. We know that crime and poverty go hand in hand. So if we're not answering poverty, we're not addressing any of the social issues that individuals are going through. We're not addressing this mother who is struggling to provide for her children. We're not addressing these fathers who are suffering because they have so many things on their records because they are trying to provide for their families in the ways that they have access to, because we know the amount of discrimination and lack of job opportunities in areas. I'm up. One last thing though, a statistic around the area that I'm coming from, Albany, New York, it's labeled one of the worst places to raise a black child in America. And that is sad because it's the capital of New York and they spent $1.9 billion on the Capitol building in that little area of the plaza. However, the rest of the community is impoverished. So when 60% of our budget is going towards the police department, and then they're upping up their federal access to funds, it's not addressing the housing instability. It's not addressing the job instability. It's not addressing anything. It's just locking up black and brown people so that they could be slaves in the system. So I would really like to address that right there.
I um I just want to add on to that. Thank you for calling all of that out. Um, I also just want to say police presence at all during a mental health crisis. I am someone with a mental illness. The last person I want to see when I'm in crisis is a police officer. I'm gonna just leave it at that.
Um, one, you know, we said, well, as of last year, um, we also know remains of native kids were found at residential schools in both U.S. and Canada. And, you know, apologies, nice. A task force is nice. But I've seen it for like a month and then it's off the media. And meanwhile, in Canada, there's way more action being taken. And now there's personal opinions, but really being there for the families and being progressive to a trauma that was created years ago.
That's definitely, a concern. I don't think there's anything that what you said is something that a lot of people wouldn't disagree with when it comes to the way that communities often have their first encounter with police officers. Um, Over the summer, the administration released the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, which did some of those things, which funded de-escalation training, which funded ways to get guns off of our streets, which funded ways that you can have more community interventions, after school programs, things like that that are helping youth specifically um, to have and find other ways that don't resort to violence. But it doesn't necessarily getting to your point about police training and those things. Those are still things that are a work in progress. I think this summer was a good step in the right direction. And the president has said that he wants to go, in terms of working towards creating more community change and more on the ground work to really ensure that communities' voices are centered and that there is trauma informed care when it comes to responding to incidents that occur, especially when you're dealing with people that need additional assistance when it comes to their mental health supports. So all of those things are valid points and ways that we're working to make sure that our administration reflects the will of and ideas that people are sharing when it comes to helping people in crisis, when it helps the people feeling safe. And that is a big concern. A couple weeks ago, we held a summit on unity, specifically calling out hate-fueled violence in the country. And that is something that we're very much committed to ensuring that people have a space so that people feel safe, so that people understand, where they can go for supports and helps, and also just to not be victimized by racial injustice and violence. So those are all the things that we're very much concerned about, but always good to be reminded of where there are areas that still need help. So thank you.
Just to kind of echo what Amber said, I just want to also highlight the work that we're doing to ensure that we have a robust crisis services infrastructure so that as we transition to 988 this past summer as the new 3-digit, easy to remember suicide and crisis lifeline, that we also have the capabilities to ensure that trained professionals are the ones to respond to those that are in crisis, either through mobile crisis units that are established as part of the state or county, or alternative responder models that many jurisdictions are also working with, and that there are safe places for people to go so that they get the services and supports that they need. So again, we are leaning in here. We have made some progress through the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act and some of the work that we've been doing with the American Rescue Plan funding, but we know we have a lot of continued work to do in this regard. Thank you.
Thank you all for answering that and weighing in. I know it was a difficult question, but it's an important one because, not everything is all wins. Sometimes there's difficulties and challenges, failures even, that are important to address to move forward. This next question is going to be our last, unfortunately for time, but I would like to invite Alexis up to the podium to ask your question.
Hey everyone, Alexis Obina from Clasp, and I'm the co-chair for the Legislative Advocacy Group. And so I just wanted to say I'm from LA. LA is a different breed, but it's also the best place in the world. And walking to Zeke's, I saw that there was a ketamine assisted living facility. We also have a few psychedelic mushroom assisted living facilities and whatnot in LA. And my question is going to be, if I can open my phone, is how can we invest in communities and close the racial equity gap when it comes to entrepreneurship? And that's coming from me who has 2 small businesses. Just want to plug myself in there because it's not easy being a business owner, but the people, my mentors, and different people in the community really have helped me really just achieve having 2 businesses, and working for some, I'll just say PR companies, has really taught me how to market to different people. So again, I'll ask the question, how can we invest in communities and close the racial equity gap when it comes to entrepreneurship? And then with the second piece is kind of how we can loop in communities to create this. Do I stand here or do I leave?
I'm standing here. You already know.
Trying to find some notes to share. I'll probably have to get back to you with some statistics. But one of the things that we're working to do is ensure an increase in federal contracting for small disadvantaged minority-owned businesses, women-owned businesses as well, to to make sure that they're part of that bucket of money that the federal government spends so much on, right? So we want to make sure that people have access and can be competitive to get those opportunities. Business mentorship is really important. Connecting those businesses, and also just in terms of when we think about equity, making it less burdensome for people to enter and get access to training and services, and making sure that states, the funds that we provide through the bipartisan infrastructure law and those types of things actually help people and are not a hindrance to people, because a lot of times trying to access services or just trying to learn things, it's difficult. Reading the information, I mean, it's difficult. And when you're a business owner, you have other things that you need to be responsible for, as opposed to spending like, half an hour trying to just read through a paragraph of like, this is the form that I need to do for this. So trying to make those burdens, um, to eliminate those burdens is a big part of the work that we're doing, especially I believe with the paper and reduction act. Right? And no, it's Paperwork Reduction Act. That's something as well to make sure that we're not creating unnecessary burdens for people that are trying to enter.
Thank you. I just also wanted to add, this was with context with that's all right. This was with context of the new law that just passed, getting people out of those low level offenses for marijuana, and especially in LA, how we have, I'm not sure the statistics, but we have so many people who were incarcerated for for those low level offenses like marijuana, who are not business owners. When, look, selling on the street is the same as selling in a dispensary. It's just you need to fill out paperwork to do it. So I just wanted to add that context as well. Thank you guys.
Good luck on your business.
Thanks. It's been 2 years strong. And then I don't know if anyone else wants to add. I see you over there, Lukey.
I know that in the city that I'm in, one personally, what I've done is I gathered a lot of the people that I know that know a lot about business, and we created like a business 101, just a mentorship to like walk people through the process of being able to create their business. And then also there's a nonprofit in our area called A Village that created a night market to allow for small businesses to come up and table. So there are various opportunities and ways that on a community level, to your point, where individuals can work together to still amplify each other, is more of like a connected marketing and pushing each other forward and keeping everyone like up to brisk on different strategies around how they could leverage their overall contracts. If you do have contracts, you can use that as collateral. You can go to a bank with your contracts and get different loans for it. So things like that, like just information is key. On a more of an administrational level, I'm not able to develop grants, but I would love to see a grant that was developed around helping individuals hire people, because we know that when you're able to hire, you most likely hire from your community. So if you're black, you'll most likely hire other black people in your community.
There's definitely huge gap. And I just echo what Luke said. I have people that believe in mission buy into your system because it can be powerful. I know when I walk into a establishment that's just one culture, I hear the language is powerful. And as mentioned earlier, just as customers buy the products and support them that way as well. Oh, yeah.
Give it up for Alexis for her question and for our panelists. Thank you everyone for your thoughtful questions and for your, very thoughtful and intentional responses. Obviously, these are really heavy questions and it's hard to condense these discussions into a few minutes per question. So I hope these conversations will continue beyond today. This is just a starting point. Um, Before we transition into our next portion of the day, which we have an incredible presentation from the Department of Labor. So keep your energy going, keep your engagement going. I just wanted to thank everyone for being willing to ask and engage with difficult questions. Um, us as young people, oftentimes people don't expect us to ask hard questions. And so I want to encourage everyone to remain critical and to think about how they, as young people, play a role in our political ecosystem because we carry a lot more power than we think. So I will just close on that and thank you all so much. I think we'll be taking about a 2-minute break just to transition. So if you need to stretch, grab some water, feel free to do that. And we'll call you back up here for the presentation. is now on. We are coming back in 2 minutes, and we're trying to start our presentation from the Department of Labor in like right at 12:45 because we're running a little bit behind. So just to be respectful of their time, we want to get started. There are some folks from outside who are about to come back in, so you still have a minute, but we're about to start. Live. I am so thrilled to introduce our guest from the Department of Labor, Stephanie. Please give a warm round of applause for Stephanie.
Hey, everybody. How's it going? Welcome back from your break. This is a really amazing session. And so I think first I want to just thank you all for having me in your safe and calm and honest space. It was truly a gift to hear your perspectives and the conversation that you have with one another. And I'll say someone mentioned that people don't expect young folks to ask hard questions. And I might say sometimes we expect hard questions, so we're afraid to ask, right? So I'm excited to be here on behalf of the Department of Labor, talking a little bit about, the Employment and Training Administration, or ETA 101, but also how you all can make your voice heard at departments like the Department of Labor and across the executive branch. I'll take a step back. I'll say my name is Stephanie Rodriguez. I am Senior Workforce Fellow at the Department of Labor, specifically in the department's Employment and Training Administration. So DOL has a lot of different components, and the Employment and Training Administration is one of many. We'll talk a little bit about all the good work that happens in ETA. I specifically sit in the office of the Assistant Secretary, which means I have the great privilege of sort of being able to understand how a lot of different pieces of the Employment and Training Administration work and work together to support our overall mission. So um, I know this feels a little bit like school, but I do have a PowerPoint slide deck, obviously. But I really hope that at the end, I can hear a little bit of your reactions to what I shared, and I hope you get some good tips. And Kayla, I'm going to talk a little bit about how you guys can bring your talents into government, because there were some questions about what it's like working in government. So onward we go. So specifically, I think we just want to say right off the bat that At the Department of Labor, we're really focused on helping achieve the administration's priorities around access to good jobs. So a lot of times we hear about in-demand jobs. There's a difference sometimes between in-demand and good jobs. And so this administration is really focused on understanding how we can support you all and businesses in creating pathways to good jobs. And so that's a big part of what the Department of Labor is doing. And I encourage you to check out our Good Jobs initiative to learn more specifics about what the department is doing and sort of the framework for good jobs. Um, the administration, of course, is also very committed to diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. And so at the Department of Labor, what that means is that we're thinking really critically about how the publicly funded workforce system is getting the tools they need to support DEIA, but also the knowledge, right? And creating real opportunities for the publicly funded workforce system to support DEIA. And then finally, systems alignment. I'll say that sounds like maybe like esoteric jargon for people inside of the government, but what it really means is helping realize the things you were talking about today, right? You need jobs, but you need mental health and you need access to housing and you need transportation. These are all systems that the government works on. And so one of the things we're really trying to do is think about how we can make all of those systems work together, create some sort of economy of scale, right, in support of what you all and workers across our nation need. So um, this slide has a lot of text. The point is not to read all the text. It's to remind me what I should tell you, which is that at ETA, most of our resources are from the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, or WIOA. And so that is a major way that we fund the public workforce system. And the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act is a big piece of legislation that has a lot of parts to it that tell us how to serve you all. And what it's really designed to do is help job seekers access education, training, workforce development, but also the supportive services that you all spent so much time talking about this morning. And so the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, or WIOA, it funds several of our administration, ETA's development programs. One big hub of our workforce system are called American Job Centers. So a lot of communities, you know this as your unemployment center. The reality is that inside your unemployment center, there's a lot of other resources too. And so that's called an American Job Center, or sometimes referred to as a one-stop center. So we'll talk a little bit more about why those are sort of like a hub of opportunity in the workforce system. But I'll say one thing that occurred to me that might matter to all of you is that these are also places where you can register to vote. So there's over 2,000 American Job Centers across the nation and all of the US territories. So they're really meant to be a resource for communities. Just a little bit about DOL funding, because you all are thinking about advocacy, how to impact how dollars flow. So one thing that is really important for you all to understand is like how the money moves, like who has the money, where does the money come from? So at the US Department of Labor, and we kind of function similar to the Department of Education in this way, we get our money and we send our money to the state level through a formula. So this is an equation based on population and all sorts of metrics that determine how much money states get. States give that money to local workforce development boards, also by a formula. So these are going to be these boards of business members, local leaders, maybe policymakers, but also often youth councils make up these local workforce development boards. And those boards get to spend money on things like youth through requests for proposals, right? So then that's really how that dollars gets into the community. So you can imagine that at every stage of those arrows, there's an opportunity for you all to be impacting through advocacy, through knowledge sharing, through storytelling, how those dollars are being spent and where they should go. So again, ETA does a lot of things. This is sort of a little depiction of how our money gets spent. Of course, those American Job Centers that I mentioned, but there's money for youth programming. There's money for residential training and education program called Job Corps Centers. Does anybody familiar with the Job Corps Centers in here? I see some nods. All right, we'll talk about that. There's discretionary grants, apprenticeship programs. So a lot of really buckets of ways that the Employment and Training Administration is spending these dollars in support of young workers. We work a lot with businesses, so I know there's a lot of entrepreneurs in here. Shout out to all of you. But a big part of how the workforce system operates is by working with businesses. And so the public workforce system can help businesses identify talent, often through American Job Centers, and also help businesses learn strategies to recruit, to train, and to manage their business operations. Um, this slide is also a lot, but we just think it's important that a big part of our portfolio right now is thinking about apprenticeships. And so some of you all might be in apprenticeships, some of you all might be in programs like apprenticeships, but we're really trying to help the business community and the training community think critically about what high quality work training looks like. And so apprenticeships are a part of that conversation. Importantly, the Department of Labor supports registered apprenticeship programs, which include these 5 categories or apprenticeship components you see on the screen, specifically paid jobs, right? So when you're in a registered apprenticeship program, you're getting paid while you're learning and you're working. So yeah. And then lastly, a big opportunity for us, in addition to those like formula dollars, right, that are going out in a really prescriptive way, are the grant opportunities. And so this should say grant opportunities for employers, but also community-based organizations, training providers. So a lot of our funding goes through grants as well. There's several youth-specific grants that come out of the Department of Labor and the Employment and Training Administration. So if you've heard about Youth Build, those are programs. Oh, hey, okay, Youth Build, okay. So those programs are often funded through the Department of Labor grants. Growth opportunities for youth, workforce pathways for youth. We have programs around re-entry opportunities for justice-involved young people. So lots of ways that the Department of Labor is using grant fundings to get dollars into the community to support young people, including at community colleges. So shout out to everybody who's advocating for community colleges in here. Okay, so that was the 101 portion. Congratulations, you all have graduated from ETA 101. But I wanted to specifically take a few minutes to talk to you about youth at the Department of Labor and at ETA. So I mentioned to you that I am a senior workforce fellow, but they have me here specifically to think about how the Department of Labor should be tackling youth employment in a really comprehensive way. And so I want to make sure that I'm calling out the programs we have that are designed for young people. Sometimes they can be hard to find in all of the information about the Department of Labor, but we're working on that. I'm also going to share some resources, but then I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our strategy and where we're going next, and would love to get your reactions. So just quickly, and I can share these slides out so you all can have these links and all of this, but these are programs that the Department of Labor funds that you can enroll in, right? Like these are programs that you can actually participate in. So Job Corps, we mentioned, some of y'all are familiar, but it's a no-cost residential education and vocational training program. There's at least one Job Corps center in every state and territory, and you can learn more about what that looks like. But you know, it's a place for young folks to get their GED, get career training, have housing, get wraparound supports, and career placement opportunities. Youth Build is another community-based opportunity. So on these links, you'll be able to find like local programs that might be in your zip code. But again, so Youth Build is a program for youth ages 16 to 24 who've previously dropped out of high school. It's a program where you can get your GED and construction and other work experiences. Reentry employment opportunities, like I mentioned, is our program supporting justice-involved individuals. So there's a variety of grant programs that are operating across the nation that are specifically providing resources, career training, career placement for justice-involved young people. There are those formula-funded programs that I talked about, and there's a map where you can find all of those as well, and apprenticeships. So that link there will get you to a place where you can search by zip code, occupation, you can look for open apprenticeship programs. So just thought you might want to have those handy. There's also some resources for youth and young workers just to help you explore and understand what's available to you. So career exploration category, My Next Move is a website, but there's also a mobile app that you can use that'll help you explore career opportunities in different industries. Career One Stop, Get My Future. Again, this is sort of connected to our American Job Centers. It's another place where you can explore different kinds of occupations and what it takes to get into those occupations. There's some resources for you all around your rights, your safety, what you should know about the way you should be treated when you are working. And so encourage you to check those out and make sure as you're thinking about advocating for economic justice, all of the things that you're caring about, that you understand that what the Department of Labor is here to offer you in terms of your rights as a worker. And then finally, I wanted to call out that we have an Office of Disability and Employment Policy, or what we lovingly call ODEP. And they have an amazing coalition called Keep Youth that is providing resources both to policymakers, adults, and program providers, but also for young people, and especially youth with disabilities, to really have help you understand how to get engaged and inform the public workforce system. Um, and so I was asked to share some ways that you all can make your voice heard, where you all can make sure it's not just Congress that knows about the New Deal for Youth, right? That we do too, as we're thinking about how we administer our programs at the Department of Labor and other agencies. So the one thing, and this is a very formal way to make your voice heard, is to respond to our requests for information. So the Federal Register is a place where any formal government document will be posted. This includes things like department's requests for information. We have to read everything you submit to a request for information. So if there's a request for information about youth employment, about justice, about climate, and your platform connects to that, you should be making sure that your voice is heard in these formal ways. But then there's also these other ways, like at the Department of Labor, we have this ePolicy Works, which is an online national dialogue platform, where we will put out dialogue topics that we specifically are looking for feedback on. So we just did one on apprenticeship that had some specific questions about youth. We're planning to do one in the new year to specifically understand youth's experience with work and career pathways. So Clasp team and everybody in here will be working to make sure everyone understands how to engage in that. And then finally, I think it's worth saying out loud that applying for grants is a way to help us understand what you care about. We put out grant topics, right? We form grants, but not just at the Department of Labor, across government. Applying for competitive funding is a way to make sure places understand what it is that you're working on and what it is that you're caring about. So I think we sometimes underappreciate that, but I would encourage you to keep that in mind. And then this is another way, obviously, to get your voice heard is to work for the government, right? You can change a system from the inside. Sometimes systems change slow, but they do change. So this is sort of some snapshots from usajobs.gov. If you're not familiar with this, this is like the main site where USA government jobs are posted. Not just federal, like not just located in DC, right? Federal government jobs happen all over the country. These boxes in red are ones I just wanted to point out to you. And so I'm reminded of Kayla's question about how do you get into government? So open jobs to the public. One thing to know is that you can apply for all of these open jobs, and they are really rigorous about how they scale them in terms of what they think your education levels might be, like what's typical. So you can filter these jobs based on the kinds of like education credentials you might have. So if you're in high school, like there are actually jobs in the government that you are able to apply for. And so you can check out these like GS scale positions, but I encourage you, if you are not in college yet or you're in college, like play around and see what jobs are available for you on usajobs.gov. This other category are these pathway programs. So if you go to student and recent graduates here, you're going to get drawn to this pathways program. So I want to just be specific here. So there's a few like really clear pathways into government for young people. There are internships. So if you are a current student, if you're in high school, if you're in college, if you're in trade school, there are internship programs that are paid internships that you can spend time working specifically in government agencies. So you're a senior in college, you can still do these internship programs. There are recent grad pathway programs. So these are programs where if you finished a certification program or you finished your higher ed degree, and you're within 2 years of having graduated that program, you're considered a recent grad. So there's pathway programs for you specifically to help you get experience in government. And then finally, there's what we call the Presidential Management Fellows. So this is a pathway program for folks with advanced degrees. So if you have a master's, a PhD, a JD, this is a pathway program that helps you get into really strategic positions in government. I am on a pathway program in my current role at the U.S. Department of Labor. And then finally, I just want to call out some of y'all are probably familiar with Peace Corps, AmeriCorps programs, but the government has competitive hiring pathways for alumni of these service programs. So there are ways that you can get hired faster, more directly after you complete service in these programs. So wanted to just make sure you all knew that in addition to sort of advocating from the outside, there's a real opportunity for you all to bring your talents and your perspective to the inside. And then finally, and I think this is the meat of what you all really kind of are influencing is, what's next for the Employment and Training Administration in terms of youth and young workers. And right now at ETA, we're rolling out our Vision 2030, which is how the Secretary of Labor and our administration are viewing how we can transform the workforce system for workers morning, noon, and night. And when it comes to young people, we have 3 goals, and I would love your reactions to them. But we're imagining a workforce system by 2030 where there's guaranteed work experiences. We know that work experiences transform lives. We know that you can't take advantage of great opportunities for free. And we know that preventing disconnection from work early can really make a lifetime of difference as you become an adult. So guaranteed paid work experience is one of our top priorities for our youth agenda. We also know that this can't happen unless businesses are committed to young workers, right? So a part of our sector strategy is really thinking about how when we're thinking about care economy, when we're thinking about infrastructure and all of this money that's going into the workforce system, how are we making sure that businesses are thinking about young workers around high quality career pathways for young workers and their commitment to building a strong basis for the future workforce? And then this last one is we're calling it no wrong door. And so this really gets at what I've heard you all say over and over today, which is you can't like tackle these problems in silos, right? You need jobs, you need mental health, you need access to all of these services. So this strategy around no wrong door is thinking about how can the Department of Labor and our federal partners and our external partners really build seamless and clear connectivity to all of the resources that are out there to support workers in their career journeys. So this looks like really like bureaucratic things that we'll do on the inside, but it also looks like creating strong partnerships with community-based organizations to link those services and make sure our services aren't like the best kept secrets, So that's what I have. Yeah, I should say that our chief of staff, if I didn't say that earlier, Anna Heje, she really wanted to be here today. She was planning to be here. She had some caregiving responsibilities like we were just talking about. So you got me today, but thank you. I don't know if we have a couple minutes, but if anybody has a reaction to sort of those 3 priorities or anything else, I'd love to hear them. Yeah. Yeah. So I think Yeah, so the question was a lot of the opportunities in the Department of Labor that I mentioned were around grants and how grants can be a barrier themselves, right? Applying for a grant, especially for young people. So did I get the question? Did I summarize it right? Okay. So I think that's a great question. I think one important thing to note is that a lot of Department of Labor grants are actually not designed for like an individual to apply for directly. They're designed for uh, organizations, community college systems, right, to be applying for. So the real thing about some of those programs that I put on the slide is understanding that the grants exist. Who are those grantees? And then how do you get access to the program that's being funded through that grant? So, for example, with the reentry employment grants, those are grants that have programs that are operating locally on the ground. You can identify those grantees, you can go to their program websites, and then you can understand how to enroll in their program and take advantage of the services that they're offering. So I would say that is one. The second thing I would encourage you to do is actually go to your American Job Center. Ask them what resources do you have for me as an individual. If you're looking for training, ask them about individual training accounts. Can you access those? So think about your American Job Center as a resource for you as a job seeker, as someone, as an individual who's looking for access to those resources. I hope that helped. Okay, back here.
Who are creating organizations and programs for their community, but the lack of scale and the way criteria is set up, it's like it's always a barrier for Black and brown leaders who are trying to create opportunities in community, to actually be invested in, right? We love our national programs. Yes, they are much needed, but then what about those other programs that are missing, like the dollars, because they can't complete the grants because you don't have capacity, and language, right? Is so important, and sometimes you're not talking the right language for government to be interested. So I think there's a disconnect with that, right? There's not enough participation programs, but criteria needs to change about accessibility and how we come through the door, right? We are enough. We're trying to get there. You can't expect us to pull ourselves by the bootstrap. We didn't come with like a silver spoon or some resources. So I think that's another thing to consider for opportunity youth. I think also the age criteria, how young adults and youth is defined in different communities is important, right? Like sometimes youth who are disconnected at age 27, they're still young. There's science out there that talks about us, the brain development and things like that. How are we connecting the dots and correlating that type of information? And on the outreach of like these American job centers, I think the idea of like welfare programs and how communities view them, or young adults, sometimes there's this walk of shame. And also assessment of quality. Have we actually checked out these centers, and do they look like a space for young people? There is a super disconnect, because even our elders go there and they're at these computers looking like, I don't know what's going on, So I think also really being inclusive when we think about how we design spaces for people who have been disconnected from employment. Like young adults are not going to these websites. For one, y'all not advertising them in the right places. If I'm on social media, barely watching TV, ain't no American Job Center commercial, you understand, reaching me as a young adult. So I think we need to think about outreach strategies much better, because I'm like, it's 2022. Y'all paying for a gazillion and one ads. Like is nothing to put that over a Instagram little banner or Facebook something. And even doing, I think, better improving on what we do with our data. Because it's not like the data isn't there. You understand? Like now knowing where certain zip codes, pockets of people are lacking, not connected. So young people have been missed throughout a lot, right? And even on the unemployment conversation and how they access those type of benefits. Because we're experiencing inflation. We're already not making a livable type of wage. So it's a lot of things I think that, and hopefully, Stephanie, this is not to annihilate nothing that you presented. I want
That's
you
what
to know,
I'm here
like, you're
for.
our liaison, right? So,
Exactly.
however we could support you to better, like, be consistent with this messaging. And so we're not conforming, not saying yes to things we should be saying no to, because at the end of the day, like, it's not showing up for community.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, y'all.
I want to.
I went there, but
Woo! So first I want to say thank you for that heartfelt and like honest and direct feedback, right? Because someone said to me yesterday that we spend a lot of time trying to talk politely about important issues, and we miss the ability to talk about where change can really happen. So I just want to like again express, right, that thanks, but I also want to just respond, I guess, to that reaction, because there will be opportunities that we are going to be intentionally seeking your feedback on exactly these ideas and these topics, because I told you our 3 big goals, but below that are all of the actions required to get there, right? It's about this federal, state, local relationship, to your point about how we reach local programs and how we understand and elevate what's happening on the ground. I think your point about marketing and how we're getting the message out to the community, to youth, to young workers is extremely important. We will be having a webinar in October specifically for the systems around outreach, but more than, we know that more is needed. And so we're really looking at our youth strategy. Let me also just say that things you mentioned aren't unique, right? To youth, this like 14 to 24 age group, which is another point that you made. So definitely seeing this as a way that we are practicing our muscles of community engagement at the federal, state, and local level around the youth strategy. We know we have advocates in this community to help us get there, and you all. And so we're looking forward to continuing to engage in more intentional ways. So when I mentioned that national dialogue that we're pulling together around youth voice, that's going to be a big opportunity. And we'll be excited to work with you all and others in this youth community to get that done. So thank you for sharing that. And please don't put out that fire, because we are going to need you to bring that to these additional spaces where we're going to be seeking your input. I think maybe one more. Okay. I don't know. Yeah, good
Thank you so much for kind of uplifting some of the goals for future work opportunities. I saw one goal around paid work opportunities for young people, and I just wanted to uplift the issue of where these work opportunities are coming from, because right now there is a huge privilege gap in terms of unpaid internships and who has access to those. And oftentimes young people who are economically disadvantaged miss out on those opportunities because the next competitive alternative for them is getting a retail job or some other job that helps pay their bills in a tangible way. And so it's not just having paid work opportunities, but also thinking about work opportunities that advance young people's careers. And to that end, I wanted to ask if there are federal funding opportunities that could supplement stipends or compensation for young people, so that more young people can have access to a wider range of internship opportunities instead of just the unpaid or even, the limited range of paid opportunities that are out there.
I think that's a good question. The short answer is that the workforce dollars in the WIOA Youth Formula funding do allow for supplementing and supporting work experiences, paid and unpaid, but it includes paid experiences. So the answer is yes. The question is it enough? How do we create those scaffolds of quality, right? To your point, where there's value, right, to you in doing that paid experience for your career trajectory, as well as that moment in time where you're getting paid to work. So the short answer is yes. The longer answer is there's a lot of policy considerations. There's a lot of advocacy that you all can provide to help us understand, what's needed on the ground in that regard. All right. Well, yeah, I will share this. Yes. All right. Thanks for having me.
All right, you all, we are heading into a really exciting town hall. So I am thrilled to bring back up Lukey and Rosebud to moderate the Civic Engagement Town Hall. Give them a big round of applause, please.
Hey guys, good to see you again. What's up? So, I found it important to have this time, kind of like an open comment period as well. Uh, but we found it important to have kind of like a town hall in order to tool people. We have 2 important elections coming up. I'm sorry. Can you hear me? We have 2 important elections coming up, within this midterm election, one being national elections, where we're replacing our Congress. But then there are 36 local elections happening for governors. And so out of those 36, there are 10, um, I would call them special elections that are going on. We have some, like even in Georgia, we have our kind of our reelection from or rematch from 2018 with Stacey Abrams and our incumbent governor. And so we really wanted to design this section or this segment to share a couple of data points, to open the floor for questions from you guys. I know we come from all cities, all states here in the United States. And so if you have any questions or need any tools or tactics on engaging hard to reach populations back at home during this time, we'd love to offer you some advice there as well. So just really giving you a framework, but my name is Daniel Rosebud, and then I'm co-hosting with my friend Luke.
How you doing? My name is Lukey Forbes. Y'all met me earlier.
And so we'll start this conversation off by an open community question. I think also being a change maker, going into year three, it's important that we kind of close out this year by also collecting some of your most recent lived experiences. And so the next cohort can kind of have a start with understanding what were some of the most pressing issues for communities during the 2022 uh, season, rather, or year. And so as we go through our town hall, I want you guys to be able to take your time, either take a picture of this now, scan it. That same community question will appear um, in that questionnaire. And so you can answer it throughout today, or you can answer it later on. But we would love for you to answer it today. Yes, he did. He made sure that we looked official. Outside of collecting, you guys' experiences from 2022, because 2022 has been our first year back together since COVID, since the pandemic hit in 2019. We were blessed enough to have two runs at New Deal for Youth, and we've been successful in both years. First year, really framing what New Deal for Youth looked like, what some of our demands were, um, and honestly, creating a score sheet so we can know how to move forward with newer legislation or even offer potential legislation up to our officials. And so in year three, again, we feel like this questionnaire will be helpful. But outside of this, we wanted to share with you also ways to get involved. Just in general, there are several. Even though we're essentially in the period of replacing our Congress this come November, there are still ways to get involved and help support current or potential legislation now. And so Lukey had this great idea to share with you guys some points about two bills that um, he feels are important.
So, as you all may have heard me mention before, earlier, I discussed around the Clean Slate Act as well as the Fresh Start Act. So, the Clean Slate Act on a federal level would create a first ever federal process. I'm sorry, process that enables individuals to petition for clearance of nonviolent conviction records and establish a streamlined system to automate sealings for eligible low-level drug records for people who have completed their sentence and remain crime-free for a period of time. The Fresh Start Act would basically just create the grant portion of this so that local municipalities can actually implement this on a local level so that it can work seamlessly. So needed, wanted, and happening. So this is something that is needed, it is wanted, and it is happening right now, currently across the state. These two pieces of legislation will remove barriers to opportunities for millions of people currently excluded from jobs, access to housing, and other and educational opportunities. Currently, if you have a drug felony, you cannot apply for student loan, so you wouldn't be able to qualify for a federal student loan if you, at a point of time, made poor decisions and decide that you want to go back to school for higher education. You'll be excluded from federal resources for that. So we really want to change that. It'll also open up potential workforces for employers struggling to hire. There are a lot of people that are looking to hire and they just don't have those qualified people. So now this would actually allow for that to open up. It'll also save taxpayer money and reducing citizenship and dependency while streamlining a costly and burdensome state court workload. So it would really help lower down the amount that taxpayers are paying for this. Again, this is already something that's happening. It's been happening since 2018. We're now in 2022, and it's still currently going on. You see our state over there, New York. Shout out to us. We're we're still fighting for our clean slate act in our local municipality. However, across the state, other states have already passed it and are currently joining on to this fight. If you don't see your state listed up there, please let me know how if you would like to get involved in your state and how we can get your state added to this list. I also have a beautiful video. It's only 60 seconds. I'm gonna play for you. In the meantime, if you do want to get involved, please scan that QR code. It'll allow you to contact the Clean Slate Initiative so that you can learn more about how to get involved. So I'm gonna go ahead and allow everyone to kind of just quickly scan this. I'm gonna give it a little bit, a few more seconds before I click on this to play the video for you all. We wonder if the volume is going to work. So if it doesn't, it's good. Turn the volume up on here. I see it right there. Let's
A clean slate allows certain types of records to be automatically cleared.
it is common sense. So again, clean slate, it would allow for folks to get back into the workforce as well as for one second, sorry for that. So again, clean slate is a piece of legislation that would allow microphone. So again, clean slate is a piece of legislation that would allow for folks to be able to reintegrate back into society. We live in a world where about 53% of Americans have a family member who is directly impacted by the criminal justice system. So most likely some of you in this room have a family member who has a criminal background, or you yourself may have a criminal background. So it's very important that we are looking at our system the way that it currently is. Right now, where we have these correctional facilities and these rehabilitation centers that we are saying when a person goes through these facilities and that they are released and they are let off of parole supervision, that we're allowing them to have a second chance. But in all reality, our system falls short in that because it does not have the proper tools set up, such as Clean Slate, to allow for folks to really be able to reintegrate back into our society. These things that folks are restricted from, there's about 44,000 different restrictions in the US when a person has a criminal background. Once you're restricted from these things, such as housing, education, and jobs, you are now legally segregated from access to these resources where employers are able to legally discriminate against you. This also allows for this generational gap of poverty to develop, where individuals are separated from access to these resources. It also limits the access to resources that their children can have.
And not to cut you off, but I think that the Clean Slate is actually a really good opportunity. I had another slide that I wanted to share that complemented much of what he's talking about how individuals reach into society with less opportunities to be citizens, essentially. So back home, I work with an organization called Green Light Fund Atlanta, which is a nonprofit investment firm. And so we seek very innovative models, and then we transplant them there in the Southeast. There's a program called CEO, which is the Center for Employment Opportunities. They're one of the organizations that we recently brought to Georgia, but they also are in 12 other states and 31 cities. And what they do is that when individuals do return home, you can knock on their door and they'll immediately employ you, work with you for that year, helping you to stabilize and gain permanency. And so when you couple things like the Clean Slate Act, when you couple things like us as advocates, letting individuals know when they come home that there is a way to restore your voting rights, and then you also unburden them, because it's hard to think about voting when you can't eat or sleep or have housing. Then you unburden them with resources like CEO. We really start to see a resurge of a number of citizens who have a voting right and the power to change the tides. After CEO, I wanted to share with you guys, just reminding you that we're in a very important time for midterms, right? So halfway between each presidential election, it's required that we replace Congress, and so that means that every seat in the House is up right now. That's a little bit over 430 something seats, and then there's 1/3 of the Senate that is up, so that's exactly 36 seats. And those individuals are determined from local elections. And so we wanted to open the floor to you guys to find out what you guys need to tool yourselves to better engage individuals back home, because this is a very important election. It's maybe one that's a little bit more important than the presidential election right now. Because if we lose control, or if not necessarily if we lose control, but if one side is unbalanced, then whoever has the best ideas to support our communities won't necessarily have the support in actually pushing that legislation through. And so, out of the 36 states too that, well, rather outside of the midterm election for Congress, which is House and Senate, there are 36 states up for they're electing their governors. Some of these individuals are in states where the incumbent won't it's okay, where the incumbent won't rerun. So there's a pure toss up between some of these states, like I want to say Kansas, Nevada, and Pennsylvania. I want to say, but and then you have other places that are just the incumbents may not have been very successful, and so no, it's fine. It's okay. We're at the end, and so the incumbents may not have been so successful in their current term, and so we have the opportunity to replacing those individuals, and you guys' voices being more heard during the 2024 presidential election. I wanted to offer to you guys too in that vein. Politicking is another app that I've worked with in the past, and they're an app that's dedicated to galvanizing young adults and mobilizing young adults in during civic participation moments. It's called Politicking, the app, and it's spelled just how it sounds. So Politicking. the app. And so they're an app dedicated to young people. They have information on each of your states, races, as well as the candidates. So you really start to become more informed about the issues versus if a person is Democrat or Republican. You really start to see what are their key issue areas and what they're trying to gun for. So we just wanted you guys to be very armed for this election and to know that there are resources for people that feel disenfranchised, feel that they don't have voting rights. There's a number of resources to support you, and then on the other end, for people that are currently engaged, there are resources also to support you in getting others engaged. So, I would say that's it. Do you have any closing remarks? Open questions, yeah. We can definitely do open questions. Does anybody have any questions? Alexis, I see you in the back.
Hi. Okay, it's on. So I feel like what I'm thinking about, like as we enter like the next like session of voting, like I've watched for like years, like because like I'm in high school and so I see the new voters like emerge and like there's like a few different things that happens. Like there's like the category of people who like don't do politics, so they like just don't vote because like they think it's like a neutral like stance. And then there's like a larger portion, and I think it's like much scarier because they like just vote because it's funny and like they don't research. And like they were all like, oh my gosh, yes, like I really want to vote for Kanye, and I was like, oh my god, I'm so glad you can't vote. um, but like that's actually like really terrifying because like they won't take the time to like research it. And so like you know I'm thinking like as we begin to like you know there's going to be a lot of us, the graduating class of 2023, we're all going to be like voting soon. And like how do we encourage like the young people to like actually take interest in it and like educate themselves, but also like not make it feel like homework. I mean, like while it is important, like you do have to like read and like understand these concepts. Like how do we make it appetizing?
Right. I'll take that real quick because I think that there, in the spaces where our young people are, there's a lack of intention to educate them about these things. So like we're at school most of the time, we're in our spots, but in those spaces, no one is really educating us about the rhythm of elections or the meaning of some of these elections. And so you do have a lot of individuals, even younger individuals, who are indifferent to political engagement. And so I think one of the things that I use back home to work with younger them what is the actual issue, and to better understand at what point did they become indifferent to advocating for themselves, and then they'll tell you themselves like, oh, it wasn't heavily promoted in my home, or some people are naturally Democrats, and so they'll tell you that they stand for a party and they don't get their issues heard, and so there you have tangible um, content to speak to, and so you start to educate them per the topic that they felt like is deterring them from voting. And then you make it just as fun as you make anything else for young adults. You gamify it. You have iterations and different ways of saying the same thing. Alexis, I know you in the back had a question. Then that'll be it if no one else.
Oh, it's more of like, I guess, a statement for people who are watching and people who are here. I definitely would like to see more talk around kind of how the police are also weaponized against like undocumented folks. My dad is from Africa, and we talk about that a lot, like how African traditions and cultures are uh, obviously not the same as American ones. And so my dad had, a little issue of putting his hands on people. And so like there are different ways to handle that other than jail. And then it ultimately left him being deported. And so I just really want people to think about that and how that plays, because I feel like for the most part we don't really talk about the undocumented folks to prison pipeline as well. So I just wanted to add that too.
To follow up with that, I completely feel you. I'm also the son of someone who is a first time immigrant. My father was deported when I was 9 years old, and he was murdered in Panama. So I completely understand what you're saying, where individuals may come into this country and the way that our policing interacts with them, especially if they don't know the language, it can be very harmful. That kind of was would have went into a segment that I was going to do around the political narrative. It's very important that we talk about political narrative when it comes to civic engagement, and that we're identifying what political narrative means. When we have candidates that are running, they all have a platform, a campaign that they'll run that allows you to get to know what this person issues are and the ways that they identify on addressing them. So when it comes to your point on police, so when it comes to your point on police, the way that the political narrative around policing is that kind of right now in this kind of moment, it's like the community is acting resistance and working jointly with the police, and that we need to work with the police in order for them to better police us. And that narrative is created by different candidates that run on a community or public safety campaign and convinces the larger masses that the only way for police to do their jobs is by having loaded firearms on their hip, tear gas, and other like utilizing these harmful tactics that even when they're approaching individuals with like swearing and things like that, that's essentially the norm. So as the younger individuals, the younger voters, as we're looking at the political narrative with a more progressive lens, our job is to make sure that we're only voting for the candidates that kind of match our political narrative. And we have to work together to ultimately change this political narrative into a more caring, compassionate system. Where if your father was going through different types of like changes dealing with his aggression and didn't know how to express that, instead of just sending him to jail, maybe we give him anger management training. We connect him with a counselor so that he can better himself and stuff like that. So the political narrative is something that's very important when it comes to civic engagement, that we work collectively as constituents to make sure that we're changing.
I second everything that Luca just said. Just closing remarks. This segment was really again to tool you guys and have this kind of open comment section for Luki and I to share things like the Clean Slate Act. He did want to share just about the difference between narrative shaping and how that really affects us back home. Just quickly, just answering the very last question in the room, it was really about how do students that go off to college away from their hometowns continue to be engaged at home for local elections, as well as being involved at national elections. And that really is about, again, access to information and us making these types of forums cool. Finding out if they are engaged already at home and then what tools they need. So there really has to be some innovation around the distribution of information. And so like groups like New Deal for Youth, as we go back home, as we're in college, as we can reach out to these groups, we have to actively go into campuses, go into spaces, and share the same resources that we come to DC to hear about, or the ones that we're at home sometimes on these local conversations, these calls, and being diligent to share that out. I'm an open resource. If you guys need help organizing projects back home, I'm here to help you kind of be innovative and distribute those projects. But with the closing of this, we're going to share our slides that we didn't get to share with you today. And then if there are any questions, we'll leave our contact information so we can continue to assist you. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Rosebud and Luki. And thank you, everyone. I know that we all want to get out and get some food. So I just want to do a quick closing. First of all, to thank the Southwest Library for their space. This was great. It was intimate. I'm so glad we were here in community together. Our administrative guests, Hannah, Bristol, Amber, Terry, Stephanie, for amazing presentations and sharing with us. The change makers. I mean, come on, y'all are awesome. This is why we were here. The audience online, I hope that you've been feeling part of this energy and part of this group. And for those who are going to watch later, we encourage you to scan that QR code to continue to participate, to send in your questions, to get in touch with us. And I also want to thank the staff at Clasp for making this possible. I know this has been quite the event, quite the week. So we are really grateful for bringing partners together, for bringing the change makers together, and for putting this event. So I hope you all continue to connect with each other. I'm here. I would love to meet you all. And we're going to move outside for some lunch and continue the party. So thank you all.
We're not getting like a fake out, like we're coming back and doing like,